the lifestyle, as it is commonly referred to today, is just another way of articulating that I am willfully, ethically non-monogamous.
It started with talking about those fantasies and, oh my gosh, what would it be like to watch you with somebody else? I don't know if I'm going to love that or hate it, but I kind of want to do it because that's exciting. And it just blossomed into so much more than that.
Hey, we're Scott and April with the Naughty Gym Show, and we're so thankful that you're here to watch this video. Over the course of the next 10 episodes, we are going to be interviewing some of the most respected and experienced people in the lifestyle community and consensual non-monogamy communities in an effort to give you all the information that we think you would need if you're just considering or starting to dip your toes into some form of non-monogamy.
And once you finish watching, if you're new to the lifestyle, or maybe you're thinking about dipping your toes in, or maybe you are super experienced, but you want to go to a place where you can just have the freedom to choose and try this new life, join us January 6th through the 13th at Hedonism Resort in Jamaica for Be Better at Being Bad Week. It's going to be a week filled with education. The best educators, lifestyle educators in the world, really, from 3 continents, will be there to help you navigate this path. There's also going to be amazing parties, pool parties, glow nights, themed parties. Go to naughtygym.com. Be Better at Being Bad Week, and you can just see you can see our all-star list of educators. You can see our theme nights, and so much more, guys. But you don't want to miss this. This is going to be the fittest party, the hottest party in the lifestyle.
And the link to that event will also be in the show notes for this video. So sit back, relax as we interview our good friends, Mickey and Mallory from the Casual Swingers. Okay, guys, this is Scott and April with Naughty Gym, and this is the first of our new 10-part series, So You Want to Be a Swinger, which we may change that name. But what we were hoping to do with this series is give some advice from some of the most respected and well-known names in the open and swinger community. And we're going to work through a series of pieces of information that we feel like you need to know, or at least to talk about and think about before you consider going down the path to some form of consensual non-monogamy.
So today we have with us Mickey and Mallory from the Casual Swingers, and they are experts in this field. They have their own podcast, The Casual Swingers, and also Casual Toys. But welcome, guys. It's good to see you today.
Oh, it's great to see you guys. Thanks for having us on.
Yes, thank you.
All right, so you guys have been in this for a while now.
Oh, yeah.
So give us a maybe a 60-second to 2-minute real brief background about how long you've been in some version of consensual non-monogamy, and just tell us your briefest story.
Oh, wow. Me first. So I had no idea I was actually in the lifestyle. I've probably been in it since my young adulthood, teenage years. Just never had a name for it. I think as a woman, especially during the time I grew up, it's a little shameful to be out with your sexual escapades. It really wasn't until I met him in my early 20s that I knew that this whole community existed. And not to date myself, but to date myself, we've been together 17 years. And for the majority of that, 16 have been ethically and consensually non-monogamous. So yeah, a hot minute.
Yeah. So lifestyle together for 16 years. And I've been in the lifestyle personally, at least in some form or fashion, since I was 17. And what a lot of people don't know about us, obviously Mickey and Mallory are pseudonyms. Many podcasters use pseudonyms, and, our faces are out now. And there are a lot of people that know us from our day-to-day lives and our family that have found us as a result of this.
Correct.
And a lot of them weren't shocked because the names Mickey and Mallory are actually derived from a movie that came out in the 90s. It was called Natural Born Killers. And Natural Born Killers, their parents were murderers, and so they were. Ours aren't, but ours were swingers, and at least on some level.
Wow.
And, so we chose those because our T-shirts actually say Natural Born Swingers on the back of them.
That's perfect.
Well, we wanted you guys to be on this first episode because we knew you had been in the lifestyle for a long time, and because you've been podcasters, just like us with Naughty Jim, you get invited to a lot of things, you get to experience a lot of things. You have a breadth of experience in this community that's going to be invaluable for somebody that's wanting to dip their toes in the water or is starting to have those conversations maybe with their significant other. Yeah. But we've used already the term lifestyle probably 6 times since we started this episode. So let's talk about what the word lifestyle means. And because we may actually, the 4 of us may use that word a little bit differently. I don't know. Yeah. But I want to make sure that we define our terms before we get too
Well, one of the beautiful things about you having been in the lifestyle for so long is you've seen the evolution of the community and what that word means and implies. And so, yeah, from your perspective,
not only what does it mean, but the most common term maybe 20 years ago or 30 was swinger.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And we've certainly evolved from the days of Plato's Retreat, which was in New York City back in the 70s. Before my time, guys, I'm not that old. But places like that was, when it was swinging, and of course it was some of the culture was popularized by Austin Powers. And, he was a swinger back in the day. And
yeah, and there's, I think, especially media, movies, music, there's always these little like Easter eggs everywhere. Like the holidays come around, everyone talks about that scene in like The Grinch, where there's a key party happening. So everyone has this perception on what they think it is.
It is. And, obviously, when we named our podcast, we knew we were using an inflammatory term when we selected swinger, because, the lifestyle, as it is commonly referred to it today, is just another way of articulating that I am willfully, ethically non-monogamous. And that doesn't mean that we sleep with everybody. That doesn't mean necessarily that we sleep with anybody. It's a reflection of sex positivity as much as it's anything.
Yeah.
And there's no definition, right? I mean,
yeah, it really does serve its purpose in a very wide breadth to some degree, where I think that the nomenclature of swinger in and of itself, like you said, could be potentially inflammatory and almost insinuates that you have this compulsion to have sex with anything and everything that moves, which is not true. I think for a lot of people who understand that at that level, in my personal life, I've experienced that they think I'm a swinger, so they have to like hide their husbands and their boyfriends, and that's not how this works.
Well, and that happens not just in, I was in an instance where I'm also bisexual, and somebody came up to me invited and was like, I just want to let you know I am not bisexual. And I'm like,
that's good to know.
Like I've said 2 words to you, but that we get that same thing for swingers too. Is like, you're a swinger. Oh, I don't want to sleep with you. And I'm like, okay.
Yeah, well, and I just look at it and I'm like, yeah, Grandpa, I don't want to sleep with you either.
Right.
Like, it's good to know.
I'm like, do you think everyone who's nice to you is flirting with you? Because that's another can of worms we can like open up and talk about.
That's what I think. Yeah, anybody that's nice to me, I'm just assuming they're flirting.
He does assume that.
Well, it's funny. In my younger years, I used to frequent a gay bar in Washington, D.C. called Trax. And I love that place because I could get a pitcher of beer for $2. And so I would go up there and hang out with friends. And, my uncle was out and gay before it was cool. And when I say cool, I mean, it just wasn't accepted. I mean, in his era, he got the hell beat out of him just for being gay. So when I would go to places like that, one day I had no idea that my uncle went there. I get a tap on my shoulder and my uncle's standing behind me and he goes, "Oh my God, do we need to talk?" Like, he was so excited that he had found me in this place that he loves so much. And I explained to him who I was, and that I didn't, what he did in his bedroom was irrelevant to me. There's this thing in this world, especially today, where we kind of establish this hierarchy of our value to other people based on the things we say instead of the things we do. And the lifestyle is about what you do. It's not about what you say. And for that, as long as you're a good person, you treat other people well, you're open-minded, you listen, because the lifestyle encompasses so many different play styles and walks of life, bisexuality, gay people.
There's a lot of acceptance that goes along here. It's not tolerance, it's not always celebratory, but there is holistically like this theme of acceptance inside this community.
Yeah. And the lifestyle, more than anything, I don't think anyone wants to be celebrated or even acknowledged for it. They just want to be left alone because it's how they live.
Yeah, they want to be okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nobody wants to be celebrated for being monogamous either.
No.
Yeah.
Just leave me alone. And let me
Thank your wife.
Right.
Well, so we use the word lifestyle a lot, and that's the word we tend to use as well. A couple of umbrella terms that you hear a lot is called ethical non-monogamy or consensual non-monogamy. And as far as I know, those two words are used interchangeably, and represent an umbrella. Both of those terms represent probably the broadest umbrella you can, or net you can cast, because it includes any form of non-monogamy that is consensual or ethical.
Right.
The lifestyle is probably a subset of that term, or at least that's the way I would describe it. But then there are other types of non-monogamy that would fall under consensual or ethical non-monogamy. Is that how you guys see it as well?
Yeah, I'd say that's pretty accurate to how I look at ethical non-monogamy and all the things that fall underneath of it. I mean, you have, hot wifing and cuckolding, and there's different iterations of polyamory, that I'm learning about as of recently. I thought polyamory was like the term, period, and it turns out there's a bunch of other terms that come along with it. And don't test me on that because I'm still learning.
Well, and new terms are made up every day. I mean,
Yeah, I mean, I think humans, we're relational beings, right? We want to know what we are, who we are in relation to something else. And I think that's why we don't like labels, but we kind of need descriptors or nouns to kind of figure out my identity to some degree.
Right.
Yeah.
It's funny that you mentioned that, Scott, that, ethical non-monogamy, consensual non-monogamy, they all kind of fall under, and they really fall at the top of the lifestyle pyramid, right? And because everything that comes beneath it is a different flavor, a different variety of it. But all of it, and when we look at, the reason why so many of us live in secret or hide our faces or use pseudonyms, is because of all of the judgment and shame that come from people that don't orient or associate themselves with this sort of a lifestyle. And I think it's interesting that many of those same people find it perfectly acceptable to have a non-consensually non-monogamous experience as long as nobody finds out about it. But when those of us that don't mind having it and are honest with our partners, all of a sudden are the problem.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting. A guy that cheats on his wife, he gets forgiven and all is well. A guy that goes out and his wife watches, they're weird. That doesn't make a lot of sense to me, but I think, and that's where that consensual part and the ethical part comes in, is not only are we not hurting anybody, we're not lying about it.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, and we're also, for most of us, benefiting ourselves as well. Not just because we're getting to have sex with other people, because it strengthens our primary relationship if done correctly. So we've got consensual and ethical non-monogamy, interchangeable terms at the top of the umbrella. And then beneath that, we tend to use the word lifestyle to describe the modern day version of swinging.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And then you also have, like you mentioned, polyamory, and that comes with as many variations as the lifestyle or swinging community has, and maybe more. Mm-hmm. But we're specifically talking about lifestyle or swinging, which is differentiated from polyamory, I think, in that we're not really looking for long-term relationships when we have these sexual interactions with other people. And polyamory tends to be looking, or maybe that's the defining characteristic of polyamory, that they're looking for some type of extended or long-term relationship in addition to their primary one, or they have co-equal relationships. And that's the distinguishing mark, I think, you guys correct me if I'm wrong, between the lifestyle and polyamory.
We tend to describe poly versus lifestyle with our throne room analogy. Mm-hmm. So the throne room in our relationship has two seats for the king and the queen. But in a polyamorous relationship, there are 3 or 4 thrones in the throne room where everyone has a say in the relationship and everyone else's relationship. Mm-hmm. So if you're in a lifestyle relationship and you give someone access to your throne room, you give somebody a say in how you interact with your other partner, or an equal say, and then maybe not even an equal say, then that tends to cross over into the poly boundary. It's about the decision making and the communication process that occurs between 2 people or more people, mm-hmm. and who gets a say in those decisions.
Yeah. Yep, exactly. Who are the decision makers?
Yeah. What I love about, I guess, the lifestyle, we call it the lifestyle, is that there's no one way to do it.
Nope.
And so when we get questions like, okay, so what's my next step? And it's like, you communicate that with your partner and the two of you figure out what your next step is.
Yeah.
I can tell you what our steps were, but that may not work for anybody else in the world. You have to figure out what that means to you. There's not just like, oh, you're a swinger, I know what that means. You have no idea.
Yeah. And I think we've talked a lot about only going as fast as the slowest person. And even today, as long as we've been in a relationship together, that's still how we approach everything, whether it's an experience we've had before or it's a brand new experience for us both. You know, everyone sits differently, and it could depend on the day and what kind of work day I've had, or, you know, how I'm feeling about myself personally. And that could change a lot of things. So it's never going to be the same answer 100% of the time. So that level of communication is so important.
It really is. Have you guys ever noticed that every pool has stairs?
Yeah.
Why do pools have stairs? Because not everybody's me. Not everybody's going to go ass over tea kettle and cannonball into the deep
I
end.
like the stairs.
Right? Some people use the stairs, and it's okay.
I use the stairs.
See? Right? And so that's why there's stairs.
Remind me not to go swimming with Mickey.
But it's you do have to go as fast as the slowest person, and that person's going to change situationally. It's going to change with the seasons. It's going to change with experience levels. Some other people in some other podcasts call it the gas and the brakes, where one person is the gas and one person is the brakes. It's not always that way. Sometimes they're both the gas, sometimes they're both the brakes. You've got to figure out your communication mechanism to figure out who's who, which one is which, and communicate why without getting mad. It is so important to communicate with each other and say what you want, like you said earlier on, Scott, but at the same time, it's just as important for the other person to be willing to hear something that might make them uncomfortable without turning it into an argument.
Yeah, that's important for somebody if they're watching this video and they're interested in some form of consensual non-monogamy, but not sure where to start. You got to know going in that if you're the one watching this video and your spouse has no idea, you're probably the one that's going to be a little further ahead, and they're going to they're going to attempt to slow you down, and rightfully so. Not everybody's going to move at the same speed, and you need to be ready for that and be compassionate towards it, because this is not an easy transition. Our culture has been built on this dominant paradigm of monogamy, and we all know what it is, what we think it's supposed to look like. It's probably been an abject failure, but we know what to expect from that. This world of non-monogamy is new for most of us, and there's a growing amount of resources, but nothing like what there is for monogamy. And so you have to come into it with trepidation and be careful and make sure that you don't try to push your partner faster than they're willing to go.
Correct. I would also say that you have to come into it with some humility. You kind of have to check your ego at the door and realize that not everything in these conversations are necessarily a threat. It's an opportunity to learn and elevate your communication level at a minimum. It doesn't mean at the end of the day you get to have sex with somebody else, but maybe even if you both see something differently, you learn something, and you took the time to actually have a conversation versus an argument. And those are the kind of things that nurture and grow your primary relationship.
Yeah, you have to be willing to have those hard conversations, though. I mean, we've had a few lately as we're looking at like solo dating, separate dating, where, you know, one of us has gone to the other, and this has happened several times where we'll go, okay, I'm feeling this right now, but you've done nothing wrong. I just need to get this out. It's nothing you did, but I'm feeling kind of a way. We just need to take a whoa, take a breath, take a beat for a minute, and let me figure out my emotions, and we'll talk about this in 30 minutes. And that has worked so well, giving us both space to not just react and go, well, what did I do wrong? You know, why are you feeling like that kind of thing? So it's hard conversations, and both parties have to be receptive and open.
It does help to understand how the human brain, how the connecting points work in the human brain. So if I know two pieces of data, let's say that I know A and I know F, and I've got two hands, I promise, I'll just put them here, A and F. But I have A and F, I will make up B, C, D, and E in my head because I know this and I know this.
Yeah.
And everyone does it. And in situations like this, they're very often driven by fear. We talk about fear a lot on our show as an acronym. Stands for false evidence appearing real. Most of what we fear will not come to pass. It's the stuff that we made up in the middle because we didn't know. So the first time I brought up the lifestyle to Mallory, it didn't go well. I did it in passing. I did it flippantly over dinner. As kind of I make everything a joke. I can't take anything seriously to save my life. And I said, you'd make a great swinger. And she almost like threw her glass of wine in my face.
I wanted to have like a Scarlett O'Hara moment, and I didn't have a like slap across the table, because in my head that word had a negative connotation. And we were starting to get very, very serious in our relationship. And I'm like, okay, so he wants to dial this back and explore other things. Like, I just, again, made up the middle. I had no idea what he meant by that. But my immediate reaction was, I'm taking offense to this, and we're definitely fighting about this later.
And to an extent we did, but when we really started to dig into it, her fear was, and the very next thing she said to me, and this points back to something you said, Scott, which is, so you want to fuck other women? That's what you're saying.
Right.
Because she had made up everything in the middle.
Well, because what happens in that in between, and it's a chemical reaction, it's your fight or flight response. That's exactly what happens in those moments. And you're going to do one of the two, but all that is triggered, you have all the chemicals being released, and it's very difficult to pause and backtrack and go, okay, let me really look at the situation and ask more questions. And that's what I ended up doing. I didn't run you through the gauntlet, but it was like being interviewed or interrogated over the next 6 months.
A lot.
I think Mallory and I might need to do our own podcast on how women respond, because I have that fight or flight response too. And I've had to go, I'm sorry, but I get that spike of adrenaline, and it's from past relationships. And so you take that with you into, relationships. And so you have to undo a lot of that kind of stuff. And so being able to be self-aware enough to go, you know what, that was a fight or flight response. I shouldn't be in that mode with you.
But those chemicals, what they create in you, April, is that when you do that B, C, D, and E, like I said, all of those become negative, because what you're doing is you're preparing yourself for the worst possible outcome.
Right. You're on defense. Yeah. Sure. Yeah.
Well, it's important that everybody that, again, is considering something like this know that these conversations are not going to go smoothly. Even if they start that way, eventually they're going to turn south, and somebody's going to trigger somebody, and it's going to go. So, which brings us to the next question. We are in the lifestyle, at least to some extent, in order to get to experience some sort of sexual interaction with somebody that is not our primary partner, right? That's at least a big part of it.
On a good weekend.
Yeah, when everything goes well. But we all acknowledge that there are some that it's not easy. Like we're talking about, these conversations, especially initially, are difficult, and they never completely go away, no matter how good you get or how much experience you have. So there are risks involved in pursuing a form of consensual non-monogamy. Is it worth the risks to your primary relationship just to get to fuck somebody else?
No.
That's an
hands
easy
down.
one.
That was an easy one.
So why do it?
Yeah. So why don't you go first? I went last time.
Because for me, my experience in the lifestyle, it's a lot more holistic. Something that I've really enjoyed about our journey is getting to know each other on a higher level, more than we probably could have in a standard monogamous relationship. And it starts with the communication, but in the bedroom, I get to talk about my fantasies and my desires and be very, very, very open about that. I'm also bisexual. So I also get to discuss and experience that part of myself. And it just kind of starts as this tree trunk, right? And it branches off into all these other wonderful ancillary things. We ended up with a podcast. I wouldn't have called that ball 16 years ago, involved in the media community and doing what we're doing today. Like, it's this, when we take a step back and look behind us, it's just that journey in and of itself was tremendous. And trust me, we've had a lot of great sex along the way. That has also been a bonus, but I wouldn't even call it the primary. And it was unexpected, because at the time, it was a lot more sexual up front for us. It started with talking about those fantasies and, oh my gosh, what would it be like to watch you with somebody else? I don't know if I'm going to love that or hate it, but I kind of want to do it because that's exciting. And it just blossomed into so much more than that.
I think the phrase that comes to mind for me is taboo. there are so many conversations that we're encouraged by our families and our mothers and our grandmothers not to have because they're inappropriate. That there are, good fences make good neighbors, things that we don't know about other people that somehow improve the relationship. And I think I believe that to a certain extent until I really had a fully mature lifestyle relationship where the friends that we have today, we have deeper relationships with than anyone I've ever been. People I've been friends with my whole life. And these people know things about me they don't. When you generate a lifestyle relationship, the walls and the boundaries are so much broader. And the conversations you can have. And I mean, I can give you a couple of great examples about where I've seen things that have happened where maybe someone got sick or someone got hurt or their family or something happened and the community came together and lifted those people up and helped them. It is the most amazing community of people. And I can't say enough about it. And I would not have it if I hadn't had the thought, I'd really like to have sex with two girls at once.
Thank God you had that thought,
Right.
Well, and that happened with April very unexpectedly, a couple of years ago, both of her parents. Well, you tell the story.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. They both passed from COVID, but
Within,
while they were in the
within
hospital,
5 days of each other.
They received cards from people that we had met in the lifestyle at events that I had only met once or twice. And they were sending my parents cards, wishing them, well, and just to cheer them up. And that to me spoke volumes because they weren't getting cards from local friends, and it was just absolutely incredible. And it's the people, it's the connections that are so deep and so authentic and so raw and vulnerable that are amazing.
And not just sexual. I mean, we say we're using the word relationship. Mickey, you just said it. But we don't necessarily mean a sexual relationship, though it could include that. One of the biggest mistakes we made early on is we said, all right, we're going to try this. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to find the hottest people that are willing to have sex with us.
Yeah.
We're going to have sex and then we're leaving and we don't even care what their names are. Right? Never once happened that way.
Well, and I said,
how'd that work out for you?
Be friends with them. I have enough friends.
Right. We had friends, we thought, but like you're saying, the friendships you develop through the lifestyle, when you can be so transparent, there is nothing that I feel like is off limits for me to talk about when we're with our closest lifestyle friends. That is not the case when I'm with friends from the monogamous world, because I feel like I have to hide a very big part of who I am and we are. And it just becomes a different level of relationship.
Yeah.
But I tell you, it did tell me how much some of those relationships, those friendships on the vanilla side sucked. Yeah. Because they showed me when they found out who I really was.
Right.
And I'm good with that. Thank you for telling me who you really are.
Yeah.
Someone
would have known sooner, right?
Yeah. There's an adage that effectively says, if a girl wants to break up with you, let her. And I think that kind of goes along with the same thing. If they're disapproving of how we're living our life behind closed doors, even though what's happening on the other side hasn't changed, then they're, by all means, please walk out the door. I'll hold it for you and don't come back. Because we don't need that in our lives.
My grandma used to say, don't let the door hit you where the good Lord split you.
Yeah. But it does. And now, like, looking at it, and this is probably going to be a very unpopular opinion. I actually struggle to make traditional friendships and relationships out there in the wild, because I feel like even at first I'm supposed to filter or hide parts of myself, because most people aren't prepared for that. There's still a lot of taboo. It's still looked as threatening. And sometimes as a woman, they double down on it because we're supposed to be demure and pure and angelic, and
they expect men to be whores.
Yeah, that's the expectation of society. Yeah. You guys are just like whatever hole, it's fine.
Yeah, it's funny. Yeah. The guys in the neighborhood here, it's because one of our neighbors found out about us.
Yeah,
and told everybody.
The whole neighborhood.
And so all the guys threw a party for me, and I'm the official Hugh Hefner.
Popular guy in the neighborhood. I walk out and the women are like grabbing their husbands. Yeah, hissing at me.
Right, embroidering her stuff with a scarlet A on it.
Cupcakes.
Oh my God.
Oh yeah, it happens. So is it worth it, to answer your question, Scott? It is, but not for the reason you asked. It's worth it because the visceral nature of the relationships that you create in the lifestyle are ones that will show you the way it's actually. You know, we had this at Hedo back in when on our Hedo trip.
Mhm.
It was the lifestyle the way it should have been, the way it should have been in the
Yeah.
beginning.
Yeah. And honestly, the sex I've had in the last 10 years has been the best sex of my life. And if someone had asked me when I was younger, my 20s would have been it, right? Because in your
Mhm.
20s, you're bulletproof, you're a little more adventurous and all these other things. Absolutely not. Like, and every year that goes by, it just gets better and better.
We one of our taglines is lifestyle less ordinary, but I would actually argue that I got it wrong and say that it should have been life, our style,
Yeah.
because that's really what we do.
Yeah, I liked what you said earlier, that it's probably close to 100% of the people that get involved in consensual non-monogamy get involved because they want to experience sex with somebody else. That is probably, it moves way closer to 0% as the reason they stay in the lifestyle.
Yeah.
The only reason you're doing that eventually is to just keep fucking people. It's just something's going to happen. It's not going to work. You're going to end up destroying your primary relationship. People aren't going to like you that much in the lifestyle if it just looks like you're there to get your rocks off. And it will get you interested in this lifestyle, but it's not going to, you're not going to be very successful.
Right.
At least I don't.
You know, it's easy to fall out of love with meaningless sex.
Mm-hmm.
It really is. I've been doing this for a very long time. I can tell you, I've lived it. It is very hard to fall out of love with love.
Mhm.
If you love what you do and you love your community, you will pretty much always will.
Yeah.
And it's very easy to fall out of love with random encounters because they're just not fulfilling after a while.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It's fun for a time, but eventually you need something deeper.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it takes time to connect with someone, just sex in general. When you're having the experience for the first time with someone, most of the time, I'm gonna go with at least half of the time, it's awkward. It's a little awkward because you're getting to know each other. You're not know exactly how to read body language. I think the lifestyle helps reduce that a little bit and make it a little better. But I think the more you get to know someone, the more you could read their nonverbal cues, the more comfortable they are being verbal about what they want. And that takes the good sex to really great sex.
Sure, you're invested in their pleasure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're going to do an episode on different play styles, and there's different ways people get labeled in the lifestyle, but for a lot of us, I know, and it seems to be the growing side of the lifestyle. It focuses more on building really strong connections first and then having sex later. But there are people, I think a lot of new people come into this thinking it's just a wild sex party everywhere you go.
Sure. Yeah.
And sometimes that happens. There are events like that, but they seem to be in the minority from our experience. And they're also the most shallow. And for us,
you know what? As a newbies conversation, Scott, it's important you brought that up because most events aren't that way.
Yeah.
So if you're looking at an event as a newbie and you're wondering like, oh my God, is this going to be like Caligula? No, if it is, it's probably going to be advertised that way. All right. So, most spaces you go in, most of the common spaces of a hotel takeover or even a house takeover, that's not going to be that way. They may have group playrooms that are going to kind of be that way, but you'll know what it is before you walk into it. Nobody that organizes an event wants you to be uncomfortable.
Yeah.
That doesn't help anyone. So they're not going to drag you into a space as a newbie that you have no fucking idea what you're getting into. That's just not okay.
Yeah, that's true. And it also doesn't mean that you're not going to meet someone that you have a really great connection with, get to know and play with that same evening. That happens a lot. So it's definitely not off the table. But I think for the mass majority, like you said, people want a little bit more of that connection, even in those spaces.
Well, so that brings up, so we're talking about some of the benefits that are inherent in the lifestyle. Do you think that these benefits are enough to save a failing marriage? If somebody's new, somebody's monogamous, and they are just struggling, maybe they don't have a great sex life, and they hear people like us talking about these incredible adventures we have and this wonderful sex stuff we get to do in our spirit. could they jump into the lifestyle, reinvigorate their love life with their primary spouse and save that relationship?
If your relationship is broken due to poor communication, failures in trust, which, by the way, have a lot to do with poor communication, then you effectively have no water in the pool. So whether you step into it or jump into it, since I'm using the same pool analogy, I'm just going to ride this bitch all the way.
I'll get
Very
around.
impressive.
We're changing the
pool
title
analogy.
to Swimming with Casual Swingers.
But yeah, you know, if you don't have those core tenets of a quality and strong relationship, communication, trust, openness, free thought, then your pool has no water in it. And it doesn't matter how you jump in, it's not going to be fun.
Yeah, it's the fire to the frying pan, effectively.
Yeah,
You
it's
know?
what is it we always said about keto? That
If your relationship is in a good space, that you're working on it, and we'll use healthy, right? Because we strive to be good at it, but everyone's perfect. It'll amplify it, and that's good and bad, right? So it'll amplify times 10 if it's good, times 100 if it's bad. It'll absolutely highlight the spaces and the deltas in your relationship, and it could make for some very, very uncomfortable situations.
yeah, what works will work really well.
Yep.
What works badly will work really bad.
Yeah.
To
And
give an example, we always say we feel like our relationship is something special. To this day, after being together 7 years, we have had one fight. We've never had a normal fight. The one issue we had was lifestyle related. I contest that if we weren't in the lifestyle, we would have still never had a fight to this day. That's how strong our relationship is. We communicate well, we love each other, we respect our differences, and we genuinely enjoy each other's company. And even still, we've had some little things that we've had to deal with in the lifestyle. So it's not an easy path. You know, we don't want to paint this as like, ooh, this is just your opportunity to have a threesome or to have two dudes rail you or whatever. It's not going to come that easy. You're going to have to work at it. And if you go into it with one hand tied behind your back because your relationship is bad, there's a very good chance it could be the death knell of that relationship.
Yeah.
And it goes to, you know, when you ask that question, April, there's people out there who have babies to try to save their relationship, and that doesn't work either. Adding more complexity and more responsibility to a problem doesn't fix it.
Yeah, it's actually, I believe, and I know there's probably licensed professionals out there will tell me that I'm full of it. This is just my belief, that it's almost like they've already started grieving that relationship. So the distraction, deflection, projection is part of it. Let's make a baby. Let's get married. Let's do these things. Let's start adding to the pile because there's all these holes, and we'll just try to backfill them, instead of dealing with them and looking at the pitfalls for what they are.
Yeah. So what would your advice be to say there's a couple that does have a healthy relationship, healthy communication, and they're interested in potentially pursuing sex with another couple or opening up their marriage? What would their first step be?
I think the obvious one is the conversation, what each individual feels and sees in that type of relationship, what's successful. That's something we ask each other a lot. Like, what does success look like for you? And then what does success look like for me? And it's okay to not match up. The most important part of that is to be honest and accepting of each other's views. It doesn't mean that we're going to do one or the other right away or at all. It just means that we're opening that up. And there's a lot of winning that happens in those conversations when you level up. And the only thing I can say for myself is, like, the next day, I kind of peacock around a little bit. It makes me feel really confident in my relationship that we can just be so open with each other. Whether or not that happens is almost irrelevant at that point.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's so to Mallory's point, opening up starts with a conversation. It always starts with a conversation. What I tend to recommend couples do is, and most couples have had some version of this conversation already. They just didn't realize it. We usually call it, the kitchen pass. Which celebrity can I have on my kitchen pass list, right?
The one thing that's never going to happen.
Right. And so it's comfortable, right? Because Scarlett Johansson's never going to walk in here in lingerie and go, "Get over here, Big Daddy," because
Fun fact, she's on both of our lists. So
Hey,
Mine too. I think both of ours too.
she's on everybody's list. Come on. But my point is that place is an interesting place to start where you go from there and go, if you could have any fantasy in the universe, anything you've ever wanted in bed, with me or without me, including me or not including me.
Check the ego at the door.
Right. What would it be and why is it hot for you?
Yeah.
And listen, hear them, hear what's driving them. And it's going to generally be different for men and women. And because, you know, a guy's going to be like, I just want to feel two women, like one on my balls and one on the shaft. And that is, that's like 85% of the guys out there that answer the question that way. And that's fine, but you're going to get a lot of different answers for it. And, you know, going from there, making the leap from that conversation to actually doing a lifestyle event. My recommendation is choose a lifestyle event that is something like here in Orlando, for example, there are meet and greets that are in a public place. They're in a bar. It's a happy hour. Pick something like that and go meet some people and let them know that right out of the gate, there's no shame in this. Hey guys, I'm a newbie. We're newbies. And we're still we're testing the waters. We're not ready to even full swap or soft swap yet. We just want to meet some people.
Yeah. Even before that, because that bestows vulnerability, right? Being honest and open. Something I would challenge anyone who's doing this right now too is when you're talking about the fantasies here, talk about what you're scared of too and your concerns. It's fun. All this is fun, but be honest how you're feeling here, because you need to start tapping into those things, because it's easy when that fight flight response kicks in to just get upset. And then it masks that emotion as anger or resentment when really something else is going on. So really think about those things and feel free to open up about that too.
Oh, and before you go into any situation, public or private, even if you're going, you know, say you get on SDC or Cassidy or SLS and you create a profile, they're dating sites, by the way. Yeah. And you create a profile and you pick a couple and they hit you up and you go out on a date. And it's the first time you've ever done anything. You still need this, whether it's 2 people or 200 people in the room. You need to have some sort of a universally understood between the two of you signal that you're not okay. Because if people are in conversation, you might not feel comfortable pulling the emergency brake on the train and bringing everything to a stop. So for us, for a long time, which we told everybody on the show, so we had to change it, it was we would offer the other one a Coors Light from the bar. And if they said yes, that meant they were good. And if they said bad, if they said, no, I don't want a Coors Light, that means get me the fuck out of here. Right. It's like, so, but it helps to have that communication point, and it also keeps you from potentially upsetting the other couple by maybe freaking out. I mean, I literally had somebody in my experiences break down crying in the middle of a 4-way play session. And it turns out she cries when she comes. I didn't know that.
We had that happen, but it wasn't because she was coming.
So.
Right.
Fill me in.
Yeah, I think one way to describe that too is making sure you're giving each other those safe spaces, something to rely on, something to know that the other person hears you and sees you at any given time. Because I think there's a lot of comfort that comes along with that, and it gives you an extra. When you're comfortable, you're confident.
Right.
Yeah, and it is important to do it ahead of time, because she has pinched my leg under the table, and we didn't have a pinch my leg under the table conversation.
Why are you pinching me under the table? I'm like
you would be a horrible piece.
Get the hell out of me under the table before.
Because the other option was
to breathe.
So going back to having signals, but also as a couple having those conversations, like I have to have conversations with him. If I say no or I'm unsure, that's a no. Like if I'm on the fence or I'm like, I don't know, I need you to take that as a no and not make me explain myself, because sometimes I don't know why. I just don't have a great feeling about it. But because I'm a people pleaser, I'll go in anyways. And so making sure that you're using your voice, and that's a hard thing to do when people's feelings are on the line, because we don't want to hurt people's feelings, and we feel like, well, they've already invested this time, we've already like spent this time communicating, and I might as well just go forward.
You start negotiating that in your head, and you're like, well, they did this, so maybe it's fair.
Explain it away.
If it's not a hell yes, it's a no.
That is one of the most useful pieces of advice to give to anybody new to the lifestyle. If you don't feel an enthusiastic yes from yourself. It is anything below an enthusiastic yes is an enthusiastic no.
Right. And then it's your partner's job to go, all right, then this is a no.
Yeah. And, you know, for some of us as guys, especially being driven by the head that doesn't do the thinking, you know, it's hard to rationalize that and go, but she wants to, and but, you know,
Right.
she doesn't. So pay attention. You know, our first episode for this season was actually called The No Paradox.
Yeah.
And it actually addressed this very topic in great detail about why it's so hard to say no. And why, you know, because it's a small word, it should be really easy.
It's the most powerful word.
But it's also a complete sentence. It's a standalone sentence. It's one of those things that, and yeah, I know you guys are going to do a session on consent, and I think it's going to be fantastic. So, you know, I'll let you cover that then. But yes,
Yeah,
no is
absolutely.
a complete sentence, and it's a very enthusiastic thing.
Yeah. One more thing I wanted to say. I wanted to go back to when he was talking about going to meet and greets and stuff like that. For us, that was one of the best ways for us to really understand what our parameters would be, because we didn't really play with anybody for the first 2 to 3 years, but we would go to events and just ask people, what's your story? How did you get into this? How long have you been doing this? What are some of the mistakes that you've made? Tell us like the worst thing that's ever happened and how you navigated it. And hearing from real people, like face to face, where we could just kind of pick their brain. That was that was like a hobby of ours for the first like 2 or 3 years. We're like, let's go ask that couple, like how long they've been doing it. And then again, listening to podcasts like yours, where you're telling the stories and it's real people with real life experiences doing this.
You should have made your name Lifestyle Safari instead of Naughty Jim.
Right. You're like, who can we go talk to?
Yeah, and that's another thing we found too, is that it's not a bunch of creepy old sex-starved weirdos in the lifestyle. It is the highest quality of humanity in our experience.
Yeah.
You do run into your occasional asshole, but people are so nice and kind and welcoming and open and understanding that it's just a breath of fresh air, and you always hate to leave when it's time to go home.
Yeah.
100%. And I love that I can meet anyone from a sanitation engineer to a surgeon. Like it's all walks of life. And it's definitely the most loving and affectionate environment. And I don't mean that from like a necessarily like intimate way. I meant that from an emotional perspective, which that energy, if we could bottle it and give it out to the world, I mean, there we go. We've just cured everything.
Problems.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, one of my favorite people in lifestyle content creation circles is Jay from Average Swingers. I say it all the time. Everything's a love letter for that fucker. I love him. But, you know, if you ask him what he does for a living, he will tell you, and I'm not telling stories about him. He'll say unskilled labor. That's what he'll tell you. But we all know, the four of us know, he's one of the smartest people you'll ever meet.
Yeah.
Emotionally, dude's brilliant.
Frank is so loving and kind.
I don't know if I would agree with that.
And yes, he's the same guy that wears the singlet / bore out bathing suit.
Talking about it earlier.
I didn't say he was a pillar of intellectual fortitude. I said him. All right.
Well, so this kind of brings us towards the end here. One of the things, though, that you guys will have a perspective on that we don't. We've been in this for a little over 7 years now, but you've been in it a lot longer. One of the things we think we've seen, but you'll have a clearer vision of, is it seems like the lifestyle, consensual non-monogamy, open relationships, the demographic is getting younger and younger. That it's still the majority of people discover or start to explore or willing to explore non-monogamy probably sometime past their 40s. That doesn't mean that's everybody. And used to, maybe if you went to hedonism or one of these types of places, the average person's age there might have been 60 or 65. And now it's dropping because the younger generation, while they will not embrace the word swinging, you know, they don't even embrace labels typically. They have embraced this more buffet style look at sexual relationships. And the demographic is getting younger. Or is it? Is that what you guys have seen over 16 or 17 years?
Absolutely. It's
No
getting
doubt about it.
Absolutely. And I'm getting goosebumps a little bit. And I kind of love that. I know they don't necessarily like labels. But I love that there's this level of confidence and assertiveness that we're seeing in regards to sex. as they approach it. My hope is, and something that I have a question on that I'd love to see is from a statistics perspective, safety in sex. My belief is because of how educated they are, their safety levels are higher than our generations and our generations before, just based on the knowledge that's available out there. But I do feel like they're being more assertive about their sex life and sexual experiences because of that. And that's very refreshing to see, because I know, looking back, I didn't know when I was in it, but I was absolutely repressed.
Yeah.
100% repressed about it. And when I met him, it almost like the veil lifted for me.
Yeah.
a bit. I could look at myself in the mirror appropriately and not with these fogged glasses on.
I feel
Yeah.
like a lot of it has to do with our parents' generation. We grew up with a lot of that shame culture.
Mhm.
And so we carried that on, and we figured out maybe midlife, I don't know if you're midlife yet, I'm midlife, that was just bullshit. But I think, you know, the generation that's a little bit younger, like his kids' age, in their 30s, 25, 35, didn't necessarily experience all of that shame. They were allowed to kind of explore and become independent and figure out on their own what they liked.
So that shame, that, I mean, and that's a beautiful way of putting it, also goes hand in hand with repression of sexuality. And repression of sexuality was a huge factor. You know, I was technically raised by my grandparents in Southern Baptist, but and of course, so shame was a huge part of my growing up, as well as despising most forms of religion. But the gist of it, and what I think is different today, is there has been a turn socially in this country over the last 15, 20 years toward really embracing and celebrating people's sexuality openly. And to that end, whether you agree with that or not, we can, as a lifestyle community, thank the LGBT community for fighting the fight for us.
Hell yes.
Because, you know, while we can't necessarily take a letter in the LGBTQI, there's several
Plus.
more, I suck, yeah, plus. But, you know, while we don't get a letter in that, we can thank them and be allies to them for what they did. What they did is they made being open about your sexuality commonplace. And by doing that, they opened the door for a younger generation of non-monogamous people to identify as non-monogamous. Whether they do it privately in their relationship or openly in their lives, they're more comfortable doing it because there's a lot of people that talk openly about their sexuality today. So we are seeing a trend downward in age. Our last trip to Hedo, our average age was in the upper 30s.
Yeah.
First time I went to Hedo, I was like, holy shit, my grandparents have somewhere they can go. I mean, liver spotted balls as far as the eye could see the first time I went.
Hey, that'll be us someday. So
yeah, it was absolutely, but you know what?
Yeah.
They were having a great time. I hope one day I get to be that guy.
Right, I know. That bodes well for us.
Yeah.
You know,
But they do.
I'm in my 50s, or I'm 50 now, and I grew up here in Alabama, the Bible Belt, Southern culture to the core, and I saw and was raised in that sexually repressed environment that really repressed women more so than the men.
very much.
I will say this: there is nothing on this earth sexier than a sexually free woman.
God, yes.
It's the hottest thing you'll ever see. When a woman can own her sexuality and feels no shame and takes what she wants out of her sexual life, it's the sexiest thing. It's the sexiest characteristic to me a woman can have.
It's probably the sexiest you get to feel too as a woman.
It's very
Feeling in total control, because there's many facets in society still today that doesn't allow you to do that, and to some degree, whether it's geography or industry or the list goes, religion, the list goes on, and to have those moments, it feels really good.
Yeah, well, and
Really
this
good.
kind of goes back to, again, being raised by my grandmother. One of the things that she used to really kind of pound into me as I was growing up and trying to figure out how to be a gentleman was, she said, in my day, first of all, if shacking up was fashionable, I never would have got married. She said that. But second of all, she said
She's the best.
that most of the time, men, what we do, we're raised to be strong and we're raised to be independent. We're raised to be a protector. And our goal with women is to get them to say yes. Wouldn't it be better if your goal was to get them to say, I want you?
right. Yes.
And that's the empowerment that Scott's talking about right there. How great is it to see a beautiful woman that you're into look you in the eye and say, I want you? She's not saying, yes, do what you want to me, or I guess you can, or I suppose. She's saying, I want you. And that is invigorating, and it's enlightening and empowering, and all of the things that we need to be truly sexually free.
Yeah, and it'll bring a man to his knees too.
Good.
Literally.
Yeah, that's exactly where they want us, Scott. Believe me.
Well, all right. So this has been fantastic conversation. What is, just as a final parting thought, if you had any advice to give to somebody, whether they're a female that is looking into this and would like to bring it up to their husband or male partner, or a male wanting to bring it up to female, or a same-sex couple who wants to explore non-monogamy, how would you advise somebody to bring this up in a way that softens the blow and makes it easy to transition into that conversation without causing problems? I know we talked a little bit about this, but any final thoughts on how somebody should approach that?
That one.
All right. So this is one of the places where it's a lot easier today than it used to be, because there's so much media available on the subject, and some of the media is a lot more palatable, right? There's some television shows that have been done out there, and some of them are done well and some of them are done poorly. There's some reality shows that are done well and done poorly. There's podcasts, there's video casts like this. That's a great opportunity to say, hey, I went down a rabbit hole the other day and I watched this and I thought it was really interesting. It was an interesting conversation. I would honestly, I like starting from an intellectual position as opposed to a fantasy position, because the fantasy kind of leads, if you have trust, communication, or fears about, or issues or fears about your partner leaving you or being with someone else or wanting something more than you, starting in the fantasy place may not work for them. Now, if you guys already have a lot of conversation about fantasy, by all means, start there. But if you don't, and if you have some issues with that, start from an intellectual place and talk about some of the content in the media that's out there. Share it, right? Maybe it's, I mean, in a case of our show, some of our shows aren't about sex at all and don't have any conversation about sex in them. Say, hey, I was Googling whiskey and I found this show and I found a lot of really interesting conversation. Or, you know, I was looking for workouts and I found this place called Naughty Gym. And it turns out they have all this open mentality and all these great reasons to be in the best shape of your life at 50. There's a lot of different ways to start that conversation from a media perspective. So I would recommend maybe finding a piece of media that speaks to you and share that with your partner, and don't bring sex into it until the conversation goes there naturally.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, and truly listen. There's a marked difference between hearing someone and listening. And be comfortable with how your partner does their communication style in and out. We're very different. One of us may take a little, very, very different in our communication. We're very much over communicators to some degree, but in different facets. And one of us can take much longer to digest and process information than the other one. It acts on it in the immediate. So you're such a tattletale.
I love this woman.
So just because they don't say anything or have a reply right away, you have to be comfortable in that space and give them room to really think about what it is you're talking about, even if it's still theoretical. You know, it could be perceived as pressure.
Spot on.
Listening to the podcast was a big aha kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I read a lot of books. Like the library did not have a lot, so I had to order them online.
Yeah.
Well, it gave me space to process in my own way. Like you're saying, like we both process things very differently. And so it gave me the ability to have my own conversations with myself and process what I was hearing without outside influence from him or feeling like he was pressuring.
Right.
Yeah, and it's important to remember in all media, whether it's published by a major, publisher, or whether it's published by a couple of people sitting in their living room, talking to each other over a microphone, recording it, releasing it like a narcissist and hoping somebody will listen to it.
Hi.
That's called podcasting. So it doesn't matter who that is. It's still their personal reflection of a situation or an emotion or their journey. So take it for what it's worth. It's a grain of salt in a very, very large ocean. So, consume lots of different types of content as you have these conversations together, if you're going to go the media route, because no one way is the right way, no matter how big their cult is.
Exactly. This is not church. There's not one gospel to live by. This is your life and your relationship. And you're going to modify
about getting started in the lifestyle or consensual non-monogamy. So you can look for those. Guys, we appreciate this. This has been fantastic. Tell people how they can find your stuff, your parties, your podcast.
All right. So we are Casual Swinger everywhere. You can find us at casualswinger.com. We have an email if you'd like to send us a message, a podcast at casualswinger.com. We're on social media, Facebook for maybe a minute or two until they kick us off. Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. And we're also on the dating sites. So as you're venturing out, there's going to be a multitude in your area. A lot of these are regionalized, but we're on SDC, Cassidy, and SLS.
And if should you find yourself in need of theme night apparel, lingeries, toys, condoms, lubricant, casualtoys.com, and the chat bubble in the bottom left-hand corner goes directly to our staff anytime, day or night, to help you guys make a good decision that's body safe for you and something that you'll enjoy.
Yeah, and you guys have been great to us at some of our adventure trips, helping give us some free stuff to give away. So we've always been appreciative of that. So,
yeah. All right. Well, it's been great talking to you guys. Thank you so much for your time. And we will talk to you soon.
Thanks for having us,
guys. We appreciate everything you do for the community.
What she said.
Thank you.
Thank you.